In the aftermath of the launch of Highguard, I almost called it Highguard $ for some reason. My brain is melding all of these live service games together. In the aftermath of the launch of Highguard, there's been a lot of discourse and discussions. Not a lot of apologies to Jeff, it seems. Sorry, Jeff. But long story short, they launched the game. Lots of people tried it. They found it wanting. It just wasn't good enough to justify like the hype, or certainly wasn't good enough to justify people leaving the games they currently are playing. And people gave constructive feedback. Some people were trollish with it, but most people had pretty common complaints. Optimization wasn't great. It didn't run very well. It still doesn't run particularly well. The maps are really big for being 3v3 primarily. Other things like the characters are fairly generic. The game mode is kind of difficult to get a grasp on, and it's very, very staggered. So you'll have moments of high intensity and then like 3 minutes of nothing, and then a high intensity moment, and then nothing. And so it just is kind of tough to get into. Some people played it and absolutely love it. Others have found it not that compelling, and demonstrably most people have bounced off of it. But to their credit, the devs have actually responded to some of the feedback. For one, they actually added a 5v5 mode. I did try this myself. I did try the 5v5 mode for a few rounds, and it is, in my opinion, significantly better than 3v3. It does, like, the fact they added it so much or so quickly makes me think that maybe they experimented with it before launch, and so it's just kind of like flipping a switch. But I do think it's way better than the 3v3 was, just being real. Is it enough to save the game? Personally, for me, not really. It's still like the same game at the core. Like, what I was kind of hoping for is for them to add a, like, basically an arenas mode, have the 3v3 or the 5v5, but just set it up with like competitive arenas. That's something I loved about Apex back in the day when they still did arenas, and they've since dropped that, and it's like there's not really a game like that with that type of movement and speed and versatility and variability of heroes that's the same way. Like, there's other games like, you know, a Valorant where you can get a sort of arena experience, but it's not the same. It's not the same. You know, they're very different, especially when it comes to movement and that type of thing. So I was hoping they would do that. Maybe they will eventually, and then I'll bounce back in and try it. But it's more of a question of whether that can actually work out, right, long term, because the player count has continued to just settle, I think is the definition we would go with. And you know, I had predicted that they would end up with 100,000. I said in my video right before the launch of Highguard, I said I would not be surprised at all if they hit 100k concurrent on Steam. Damn close, damn close. But this shows that a lot of people were willing to try it. They were willing to give it a shot, and they did. And they just didn't find it wanting. Now, I'm sorry that I have to vent about this, because this is like the stupidest thing I ever saw. People started spreading around like posts and doing like research where they were like, hey, I did some analysis and I found that the longer people have played Highguard, the higher they tend to rate the game on Steam. So if you sort reviews by 5+ hours and compare it to the reviews by players who played less than 1 hour, then it's totally different. You'll see people are way more positive. Here's one of the posts. This is the same guy, ex-IGN, that was glazing Highguard a ton, calling people stupid for saying it looked mid, stuff like that. He said, reviewer playtime, 42.5% of players played less than 1 hour, 27% less than 2, 9% more than 4. Reviewer recommendations by playtime, 1+ hours were mixed, improved from mostly negative. 2+ hours, mixed. 4+ hours, mostly positive. 5+ hours, very positive. And there were fewer than 100 Steam reviews that had played more than 10. Now, the reason, what this is being used to describe, and I've seen articles written about this by similar people, is they're saying, okay, well, the implication is that people are acting in bad faith, that the people that are leaving negative reviews are just popping in, playing for 10 minutes, and then downvoting it and reviewing it badly because they're just haters. They didn't give the game a fair shot, right? What drives me crazy about this is that this is literally true for every game ever, I think is the technical description of what's going on here. If you like a game, you will play more of it. Shocker. If you don't like a game, you will play, carry the 3, divided by 2. You'll play less of it. Shocker, I know. If I play Highguard and I put 25, 30 minutes into it and I'm like, you know what, I'm just not having fun, especially being free to play, I'll download it, try it, and if I'm not liking it, I'll just uninstall it. I don't have this like need to put 2 hours into it to see if I wasted my money or anything. I'll just try it, and if I don't like it, I'll uninstall it. You know, low barrier to entry, but low barrier to entry goes both ways. It means you can get in quickly and you can leave just as quickly, right? It's why I said that for certain games like extraction shooters, it may actually be better to have a price tag on it because it's a higher barrier to entry, but that means that people are not just going to instantaneously rage quit if they get griefed on or if they have a really bad first 1 or 2 rounds in the game where they die and lose their stuff. If they paid for it, they're less likely to give up on it because they you know, put money up front to experience it. Whereas, you know, so there's a give and take, there's a pro and con for both sides of it. But in the case of something like Highguard, they needed people to just get in and try it, especially because they didn't really do much to explain what the game even was. So this whole thing, like, yes, it's true. The longer people play, the more they tend to like it. That's true of literally every video game, though. The people who love Call of Duty probably have hundreds or thousands of hours in Call of Duty. The people that played Call of Duty for 15 minutes didn't like it. Does that mean their opinions are invalid? No. No, like, it just doesn't. But this is like, this doubles up with another narrative that actually started by Sven from Larian, and he has since clarified his opinion and what he was trying to say. Sven, so he said, he made previous posts describing how he thought that games and game reviewers and critics should possibly be rated themselves, like with a Metacritic for reviewers. It kind of seems, I don't know, he might have, like, I don't know if he's responding to somebody or if that was his own quote tweet, I don't know. But he since clarified it and was trying to say, like, his point is not that I have an issue with criticism. My point is that it doesn't need to be hurtful, which I agree. All criticism should be constructive, certainly. But this kind of built on other narratives that were building up in the aftermath of Highguard, where there was this broader disdain for people who didn't like the game. And there were attempts to discredit those opinions as though they were just haters. You know, they only played the game for less than an hour, therefore you should disregard their opinion. No, if I go to a restaurant and I order a soup and it tastes like an armpit, even though I didn't eat the full soup, it's still, like, my review of the restaurant saying the soup tasted like an armpit is still just as valid as the guy who's like, this is horrible, glug, glug, glug. I hate it, glug, glug, glug. Like, that doesn't make your opinion more valuable than mine just because I tried it, didn't like it, and bounced off of it. I can accurately describe my experience with the game. You know, this to me is like, we're grasping at straws, fam. Like, this is not a great argument. And for me, at the end of the day, like, what we saw with Highguard was not people just blindly hating on the large scale. There certainly were some people that are trolls, but that's true of every game. There's still people out there who are like, yeah, Baldur's Gate 3, it's boring, woke garbage, it's terrible. Like, you still see people like that are out there. They're trolls. They're trying to get a rise out of you. And they're not that concerned with the quality of the game because that's not why they're there. What we saw with Highguard, though, was 100,000 people concurrent on Steam. As you can see, an estimated, just from these estimates, over 1 million is the average expectation for the number of people that actually tried it just on Steam, not to mention console players and people on other platforms. People did try it. They just didn't like it. They're allowed to not like it. Okay, people have suggested that, like, Jeff was paid under the table to promote it. I don't think that happened at all. I think that Jeff honestly liked the game and thought that the game was awesome and wanted to promote it because he believed in it and really liked it. And that's great. He should have that ability and right to do that. But in the same vein, if he has the right to like what he likes, We have the right to like what we like and to dislike what we dislike. And in this case, I think people tried it. They just found it wanting. It wasn't good enough to shadow drop. It had plenty of problems. And just being real, if you're going to shadow drop your game, that thing has to be ironclad, dude. You cannot afford to have performance issues if you're going to shadow drop something. You can't have server issues if you're going to shadow drop something, unless it's just like so overwhelmingly successful that there's no avoiding it. But they had matchmaking issues where like you would load into a match and then get kicked out. Like when I was playing it on launch day, I would have to try for 5 or 6 matches before getting into one. It's not great. Like you can't have those problems on a free-to-play launch of a game that otherwise is just not that interesting or compelling. With one game mode, you know, it just doesn't work. And so I think that there's just a fascinating disconnect between some of the game's media with, you know, people like Fran, 18 years, ex-IGN, who has been trying to like glaze and buff this game up as best he can. There's a disconnect between people like him and then other people that have suggested that, you know, if you don't like Highguard, you're just being a hater. And then what seemed to be the vast majority of players who tried it and just found it not good enough to play. Like it just wasn't good enough. And that's a story as old as time. You know, there's been plenty of these posts from people that have found, the same the same corpos who shilled for Concord are now shilling for Highguard. Who could have seen that coming? Like some of these same people that wrote articles, I played 7 hours of Concord this weekend and immediately want back in. Posted July 15th, 2024. And then he writes another article. Highguard is fine when you don't have an internet in your ear telling you it's nasty. They didn't say it's nasty. They said it looked boring. And guess what? Kind of seems like they found it boring. You know, it's just dumb. So at the end of the day, despite us feeling kind of gaslit for a long time, acting as though this was going to be the second coming, and then, you know, being told that we were all wrong. And I was like, you know what? I'd love to be wrong. I'd love for the game to be amazing. I'll believe it when I see it. We played it. It wasn't what it was made out to be, and people kind of moved on, and they're already kind of in a rough spot. I do think if they continue to listen to feedback, if they continue to add in new modes, new systems, fix performance and stuff, they have name recognition now, so they could actually, you know, dig themselves out of a pit. Whether or not they can do that fast enough to save the company is another question. But the Highguard saga seems to be coming to a bit of a close, kind of a whimper of a close. And it's been entertaining. It's been interesting. It kind of went exactly the way I think a lot of us expected it to. But, you know, I did not expect the game's media to become so vitriolic. And I think the technical term for what is being exemplified by the game's media right now is contempt. That's at least what it makes me feel like. Like these posts, the other posts that we looked at, like from Fran, it exhibits a sense of contempt. The feeling that a person or a thing is beneath consideration, worthless, or deserving of scorn. Disregard for something that should be taken into account. And I think that's what we're seeing. I think a lot of these people have contempt for those players who didn't just sit down and consume. They have contempt. They look down on you for not just mindlessly hyping it up and eating it up. And I think that, you know, on one hand, I think there's people that just honestly want the industry to be a more positive place. And I can respect that. I think that's where Sven was coming from. I think he wants people to appreciate the art of game crafting and how much work goes into it, which I can understand and appreciate. Yes, it's anytime a game ships at all is a miracle. Video games are ridiculously difficult to make, and it takes so much collaboration and years of work and blood, sweat, and tears. That absolutely is true. And I do think you should appreciate that and the work that goes into it. My point with Highguard is that it's a concept that never really made sense. Same with Concord. Did I say Concord twice? I don't know. It's a Freudian slip at this point. Highguard concept never made sense. Concord never really made sense. Fair Game $sign doesn't seem to have made sense. All these games fail not because the people that made them are untalented or unskilled or don't know what they're doing. They failed because the concept was never going to work to begin with. You know, you can have the world's most talented craftsmen and shipbuilders construct a ship that is designed with a really cool sunlight or sunroof, but it's inverted. It's a sunroof, but for the ocean. And then some guy in the back goes, isn't that just a hole in the boat? It's like, no. Get him out of here. He's not being positive. And then they build it and the ship sinks. And then they're all shocked that everybody was being so negative about the sea light, you know? When it's a concept that just never should have been greenlit to begin with. And everybody's shocked that the ship sank, but everybody else that's sitting on the sidelines is like, what do you mean? Like, this never was going to work. We tried to tell you this is a bad idea. And I think in the case of a lot of these live service games, unfortunately, is that they just end up spending years and years and years and millions upon millions of dollars, and they waste it trying to sacrifice it at the altar of live service under the hopes and dreams of Fortnite money. And that kind of blinds them to what is likely to be successful. And I think that, you know, the positivity side of the industry that like Sven is pushing, which I absolutely agree with and respect, I think that needs to be tempered at the same time and balanced out with the other side of the industry, which is less fun to talk about, which is just frankly that this is an industry. It is a business. A company that is making a live service game is trying to build a product. Maybe it's initially set up as a free-to-play product where they get you in, but they're still trying to sell you stuff. They're still trying to sell you the battle passes. They're still trying to sell you on the new cosmetics. Some of the games will have all sorts of things with, like, you know, doing polls for new characters or other. It's still a product. They're still trying to extract money out of you, time out of you, data out of you. It's still a product. It's not just like they created a painting and want you to look at the painting. I agree if you go up and you're going through an art gallery and you just go, this sucks, this painting sucks, that just makes you kind of an a-hole. But if they're going to try to sell it to you and they're trying to get you to pay money for it, you have the right to say, I don't like this. That's okay. It is a product at the end of the day, you know? So I think the Highguard thing was very revealing to see how a lot of the industry tends to handle this stuff. I don't know exactly why the industry reacted so viscerally to Highguard in its defense. I don't know if it's just that Jeff stood by it. I don't know if it was that it was former Respawn guys. You know, maybe it was that it had enough hype behind it from the Game Awards and from Jeff that people were buying into it. And so with Concord, you know, they never really bought into it or tried to defend it that much. Some of them obviously did, but the whole thing is just fascinating. The whole thing is fascinating. And I do think you saw a lot, you know, you saw behind the veil for a lot of these outlets and a lot of these individual journalists, what they really think of you if you dare to think that something is bad. I think with Jeff, he just honestly liked the game and wanted to promote it. I think it was short-sighted because I think that most of the negativity around the game came from high expectations that were pretty much entirely front-loaded by the Game Awards placement. I really, truly, honestly believe if it was put in the show, but halfway through, mixed between a bunch of other stuff, I don't think any of this would be happening now. I don't think any of us would be talking about Highguard at all. But I also think the player count peak would have been nowhere near 97. I don't think it would have been anywhere near this. Maybe like 5K. I think they would have started here. And, you know, they might still be here, but I think they would have started here and wouldn't have reached this peak. So in a way it worked, but I think with increased scrutiny comes increased expectations and higher standards. And demonstrably, they did not retain the players. Those players did not find the game compelling enough to stick with it. And, you know, before Highguard launched, I brought up the comparison of Evolve, and it seems like that comparison has just held more and more true as time has gone on. Look, shout out Old School Destin, shout out. But, you know, they showed this play chart back in the day, and I think that that's pretty much what we're looking at. I would imagine, you know, maybe if they add arenas, you could see a spike like this again. But this is effectively what's, I think, happening right now for Highguard, is that a lot of people tried it and they just didn't find it particularly good. And so they've just moved on. And because it's free to play, Evolve was a paid game. It was a full price game. But because it's free to play, it means a lot of people can just get in, try it, move on. And that's where we're at. I asked some friends of mine, we had a game night when I got back from Florida, and I was like, hey, you guys want to play a game? You guys maybe want to try Highguard? They're like, oh, dude, I saw some videos. I tried a few matches. I'm good. Let's do something else. You want to play No Rest for the Wicked? Like we moved on to that. So, and I think that's where a lot of people are. But yeah, the Highguard thing, it's been fascinating. It's been fascinating. Maybe they will blow us away. Maybe they will, pull a rabbit out of the hat and surprise us and wow us with something totally crazy that makes it a whole new thing. I don't know, but time will tell. I'll believe it when I see it.